All right, here's the 12.2 quiz, and here are the answers to the problems. The first problem, we're looking to see what is the excluded values. That's all we're being asked for. So when we're talking about excluded values, we can ignore the top half of the fraction. We only care about the bottom half of the fraction, and we only care when it is equal to 0 because we don't want to divide by 0. So anytime any number that makes the bottom 0 is our excluded value. So we're going to say b squared minus 8b plus 15 is equal to 0. We're going to find what numbers make that denominator into 0. Well, first of all, I see a quadratic equation. And remember, I can't deal with any individual things. I can't factor anything individually out. I'm going to have to factor it into two binomials. All right, I know that I'm going to have a b and a b. And what number, when multiplied together, what numbers, when multiplied together, give me positive 15 and added together, give me a negative 8? Well, I see that 5 times 3 is 15, and if they were both negative, they would add up to negative 8. So minus 5 and minus 3. Okay? And now I have the b minus 5 times b minus 3 equals 0. And whenever I know that something's going to equal 0, and I've got two numbers multiplied equal 0, by the zero product theorem, either that number is 0 or that number is 0, or both are 0. So let's figure out each one when they're equal to 0. Okay? And when I do that, I add 5 to each side. B equals 5. Add 3 to both sides here. B equals 3. And there are my two excluded values. B equals 3 and B equals 5 are my excluded values. Now in problem number 2, they ask the same basic thing. I need to know my excluded values, but at the same time, it says simplify. So I've got to have two answers now. I've got to simplify this guy right here, rational expression, and I got to find the excluded value. Let's simplify first. I see that I can rewrite 13a. 13 is a prime number, and a doesn't prime factor, so there, that's good. 39 can be 3 times 13 times a times a. Okay, that means that the 13 and the 13 cancel out, and an a cancel out, and I'm left with 1 over 3a. And that is the simplified version of that guy. But now I need to find the excluded values. So I say 39a squared is equal to 0. Remember, I just take the bottom part of my fraction and set it equal to 0 and solve for whatever variable is there. So I can divide both sides by 39, and I get a squared is equal to 0. I then take the square root of both sides. A is equal to 0. So that is my excluded value. And that makes sense if I check it back here. The only number that a could be to make the bottom 0 would be 0. 39 times a times 0 is 0. All right, now let's look at the last problem in the quiz. It's just like the second problem. It's asking us to simplify, and then it's asking us for an excluded value. But this time, instead of simplifying a monomial over monomial, we have a polynomial over a polynomial. And the very first thing we need to do to ask ourselves is, we've got to factor these guys. And the first thing I notice on this top one is that there is no single value of x. It's not 1x, it's 5x. And if you remember your factoring rules, I've got to somehow make that into 1 to make this work. So I can do that by saying, looking at 5 goes into all the terms of the polynomial. So I'm going to make the top 5 times x squared plus 2x plus 1. And if you see that, 5 times x squared gives me 5x squared. 5 times 2x gives me 10x. and 5 times 1 gives me 5. So this is equal to that. But that's just the top half of my equation. Let's do the bottom half. Same concept, except this time I'm going to pull a 3 out. Pull a 3 out of the first term, all I have left is x squared. Pull a 3 out of the 6x, I have 2x left over. And pull a 3 out of the 1, I have a 1 left over. And now something very interesting happens. I have a polynomial that's the same on the top and the bottom. Well, that's the same number over the same number. That's just 1. They cancel out. And my final answer is 5 over 3. Now, let's do the second half of this problem. Let's figure out the excluded values for this guy. Well, in this case, we've already figured that the bottom is 3x squared. Let's rewrite it first. We've already factored a 3 out down here, so let's do that again. Remember, we're set it to equal to 0. 2x plus 1. All right, so now I can divide both sides by 3, and I get x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. Now, to find out what x is, now I'm going to have to factor, okay? And I am going to do the factor table in my head. I need to know two numbers when multiplied together give me 1, and added together give me 2. That's kind of simple. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So this is x plus 1 times x plus 1. And since they're the same, they're going to get the same answer. I can set one of them, or actually at the same time, I'm setting both of them equal to 0 and solving for x. X is equal to -1, and so the excluded value is -1. And that's the quiz.